Welcome everybody, it's great to see so many people here with us today. So probably just a little over a year ago, we had some conversations with the Bowen family about putting together what we felt would be a fitting tribute to Dave Bowen, who obviously was such an important part of the club, from a player who we best obviously remembered for managing the club, taking the club as he did up to our most successful time and getting into the First Division. But much more than that, he was also secretary, director, president, just about every job going, and dedicated a lot of his life to this club. We've worked with Icon to produce a bust which will help us to tell the story to the next generation, really, about the man who did so much for our club, as I say. That's about all I'm going to say. I'm going to hand over to Barry Bowen, who worked quite hard with on getting this right and making it a nice tribute. Barry's just going to tell us a few things about his father and his career.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Firstly, can I just say a big thank you from the supporters and also the family to the club for making this happen. It really is appreciated, so thank you very much for that. Dave Bowen didn't play many games for Northampton as a player. He played at Arsenal most of his career, as we know, and he played at Wales as well. Memorable games, he had a few, and he spoke about two regularly. One was Arsenal 4, Manchester United 5. And it was memorable, not necessarily because of the results, but because it was the last time on English soil that Manchester United played before the Munich air disaster. And I know it meant a lot to him. 1958 was the other one. World Cup, Sweden. Wales 0, Brazil 1. Some player called, what's his name? Pele, I think it was Pele. Pele scored a goal, which knocked them out the cup. They've never got that far since, and they've never got that far until then. Memorable games, but nothing compares to the miracle that happened here at Northampton. Here at Northampton, they got a manager who had never managed before, and they were in the lower tiers of, as was, Division 4, now Division 2. Dave Bowen came there, and I think they were looking to consolidate, to keep their place in the league. But they didn't just keep their place in the league, they got promoted. And they got promoted to the First Division. And when they went to the First Division, as was, I'm sure they thought, we'll consolidate this season, we can't go any further. And what happened the next season? Promoted again. And then they got in what would be today the Championship. The Championship. And in the Championship, there must have been good news and bad news. In my brain, the bad news would have been there was no such thing as sponsorship in those days, obviously. There was no Sky, there was no parachute payments, and shirts just had a number on the back. There was no sponsorship. Money would have been tight. Bad news. And the other bad news, this was the club without a ground. They had to borrow it off the cricket club, as we all know. Spine Cop, Hotel End, main stand, the cricket ground. That's what it was. If you imagine trying to get players to come and play for you with hardly any money and with a cricket ground, it must have been some achievement. But they did it, getting to the First Division as was, or the Premiership as we know it now, which was a remarkable achievement. How remarkable? Joe Mercer put it like this, who became the caretaker manager of England. 1966 was not famous for England winning the World Cup. It was famous because little Northampton, the Cobblers, were playing in the First Division against Manchester United, against Chelsea, all these big teams. A remarkable achievement. to get that far. From that position there, playing in that position, Northampton, Dave Bowen went on to hold every position at the club. He'd been a player, he'd been a manager, he'd been a secretary, he'd been, I'm trying to think of the other ones, he'd been the president, he finished up with of the club, he'd done everything, except one. This. He hadn't done this to welcome all of you every home game to a ground, because he loved this club. After they won the league, you can imagine, he had lots of offers to go to other clubs. He didn't. He loved this club. He wanted to stay here, and he stayed here. And when he stayed here, his biggest thrill was match day. Match day, he used to love coming here. He was the first one here. Well, guess what? He's going to be the first one here every match day, because he's here for you all now. And he's waiting for the next memorable game and the next miracle that will happen here. Let's have another memorable game today. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for supporting us.
Delighted to obviously have got a number of the Bowen family here today, so just want to welcome you all. And now, without further ado, I'm going to ask Barry, Keith and Graham, if they're tall enough, to try and get that flag off and unveil the club.
You get the talk. You get the... 1, 2, 3,